Very privileged to have this opportunity to share the Penasquito story with everyone. Um, just a little bit of background. I had to include this disclaimer in because couldn't release it without it. But a little bit of background on where I work. It's Penasquito is Goldcorp's flagship company. Um, on a global scale, we're not anywhere near being the largest gold producer, but it's very important for us to make the most out of this asset. And so in 2016, we had a initiative that started off with trying to improving our margins, and is this 20-20-20 initiative that started with increase of growth by 20%, a 20% reduction in our all-in sustaining costs, and a 20% growth in our reserves. And so, that was a 5-year plan to achieve these goals. So in 2016, we started off, the IT group approached us and asked us if we were interested in taking part in a proof of value concept for entering into an enterprise agreement with OCSoft. We had been using OCSoft Pi for a number of years, since 2012, and had moderate success in using it. There's adoption between some of the operators, but really we weren't getting full value out of it. And so I saw the opportunity in bringing together some of the groups from OCSoft to collaborate and brainstorm about some of the initiatives that we could use Pi more effectively. So we came up with about 5 different initiatives that between all the brainstorming sessions that we had. And certainly each one of these had a profound impact, but one sort of stood above the rest, and that was really on the metal recovery side, and that's the whole focus of this presentation. Also, just note, like we had a short time frame in order to prove the proof of value. It was less than a year, and so we had to pick something to focus on that really was easy to achieve and had potential for high potential for results. So, sorry, going back here. So the metal recovery is really a function of how concentrated and how dedicated your operator is. We're still largely dependent on a lot of manual processes, and mining, just as the nature of mining, is open pit mine. It's highly susceptible to variations in the feed. You have deposits that go in veins, and there's trenches where you have high deposits of gold and trenches where there's very little. And so there's a lot of variability in it, and it's really dependent on operator vigilance in trying to react accordingly to the feed grades. And what we found was that there's in this red circle here, there's these times when our recoveries just dipped, and for no explicable reason, whether or not that was due to the operator not paying any attention or just not understanding how to properly adapt to that variation. So it was very difficult for the operator to really optimize on the recoveries. And we saw this, this was a significant improvement that we could make if we were to give them the tools and the data in a more meaningful fashion to make their jobs easier. So this is one of the screens that the operator looks at on a daily basis, and before we took this initiative. And basically this blue line that you see here is just this arbitrary number on what the recovery target should have been. It wasn't based on any kind of science whatsoever. It's just, you shall produce to this target 70%, for instance. And whether or not that dips above or below, there's not really that much of a consequence to it. And what we saw in the performance of operators, it was that there was variations from shift to shift. You have this sawtooth waveform that kind of indicates, the day shifts would perform a little bit better than the night shifts, and the night shifts constantly showed the same kind of dips in the performance. There's other times where we'd have a significant drop in our actual recoveries compared to what the simulated value was, due to other variables in the product, whether or not it's high carbon within the feed material or something else. But our metallurgy group was looking at these reports, and they're looking at this at the end of the week as sort of like a post-mortem report, looking at how our operators were performing, pretty much 7 days previously. And so what they had in the report was an algorithm that was developed by the technology group. It was based off of the historical returns or historical recoveries based off of the feed rates. And so realized that there was the hard work was already done. There's already this algorithm that we could have put online. So what we have, that algorithm is based on these on-stream analyzers. And these are X-ray analyzers that sort of measure our feed material going in and the feed material going out, and in real time. So we built a dynamic simulator that utilized this data that was available to us, utilized this infrastructure that was already built, utilizing Pi that had been there since 2012, and put it into a real-time trend for the operators to really look at and follow. So this slide is really kind of shows you the before and after what we were able to do. Basically taking what was once a fixed line that wasn't based on anything meaningful, and developing a simulator that really was based off of what their incoming targets were, and providing the operator a real guide on where they should be, and really in turn generating accountability on how they should be performing. And so you can see when there's a dip in the actual recovery and the actual simulated result was that there's questions to be answered. The questions that they have to answer as to why was there this dip and why did you not respond. But the operators didn't take it in that way, and sort of it was more so they were finally given a map on how to actually operate, and the results were really tangible. You can see in this green box here, this is basically when we implemented the simulator. The red is the simulated, what the actual historic values were, and the blue are the actual recovered values. And so you can see just visually in this trend that the amount of blue that drops below the red is far less after the implementation of the simulator. And it's really a measure of how effective was the tool. You can actually see it in results here. We saw improved stability in the performance of the operators, a lot less variation in our recoveries, improved recountability. And overall, we saw improvements in our two base metals, which we're able to measure using the on-stream analyzers. It's lead and zinc. And gold is entrenched in both of those base metals. And so optimizing on the recoveries of lead and zinc, in turn, optimizes the recovery of gold and silver. Within those 6 months that this tool was implemented, we saw a improvement of 4% in zinc alone. That's not accounting for the lead improvements, but substantial in 6 months. If we rolled this out for a 12-month period, the overall improvement was 7% in zinc. This is a typical monthly report, operating monthly report. And so it just kind of illustrates the numbers that we saw in improvement just based off this simple tool. I mean, there wasn't really any kind of rocket science attached to it. It's basically just taking a tool that was used in a post-mortem report and putting it online, making it real time, and making it presentable to the operators and training them to use it. And we saw just massive improvements. I mean, this is across the board. This is our concentrate, and this is probably, at the time, an average month of performance. So in summary, it's getting information to the operator in real time so that they can make the right informed decision. And that was the key first step. It was our first real attempt at this digital transformation. Penasquito had been operating for 8 years under the same kind of operating philosophy, and it wasn't until I was brought in and the whole team was brought in to really look at how the operators were performing and basically disrupting their standard operating practices and changing all that and getting the results that we were able to show here, and really leveraging off of technology that was already there, but utilizing it in a more effective manner. And so that was our first step and first real push into digital transformation. We hope to take further steps in the next few months. That's all I have for now. Yeah.